Boom! Isn't he a scamp? Forgot I had this toy upstairs. We are all Bender all the time in these parts. Hey, welcome to the shop, fellow maker. Happy to have you here. Happy to be joining on this journey. We did a ton of work on Bender's car in our last video in this series, and we have a lot more work to do. Today, we're gonna work on the wheels. By the end of this video, this thing should be driving around. Here's what the truck came with, these big beefy wheels with squishy rubber tires. There is a hexagon inside the rim that matches with the hexagon on the wheel post here, so that when it goes on there, it gets keyed in place so that it doesn't slip. And then there's just a nut that screws on to hold it there. And we can take advantage of that hexagon from when we design our own wheels and tires. And I have to design new ones because these don't fit, not even a little bit. These are gigantic. They're not gonna work for us. I thought about taking the rubber off of here and repurposing the inner part, but they're glued on there and I have no idea if that's gonna work, and I might wanna use these again for a future project. So we're gonna head to the computer and design ourselves some new wheels and tires. I've 3D modeled both the rim and the tire for our car, but I have a wacky idea for making one of them out of plastic and the other one out of rubber and having them locked together. What I've got here is a wacky looking wheel. This is the inside portion with a tire that goes just outside of it. And the idea is I'm going to take this whole thing that's combined and make a mold of that. And then I'll take a 3D printed wheel, put that in the mold, and cast rubber around it. You can even see that this has channels going all the way through it. And these channels will let the rubber go through the wheel and lock the rubber to the 3D printed plastic part. I'm like 95% sure this will work, but I haven't done it before. So let's print some parts and give it a try. After a couple of days of printing, I've got all my parts. Now, this is the full wheel with the tire on the outside of it. And it took me a couple of tries to get this right. This was my first attempt. The wheel itself was just too flat. I found that when the car turns, it kicks out on the bottom and actually tilts a little bit. So this flat profile doesn't work because then only the edge is on the ground. It still works, it's just not very effective. So I redid that with a profile that is more rounded. And I think that's probably going to perform a little bit better. I also made this face a little bit more rounded. And when I printed this one, I used the option in Prusa Slicer to change the layer height when it got here. So this is 0.2 millimeters, and then when it got to this rounded curved part, I changed it to 0.1 millimeter, I think, which is less stair steps than what I had before, and it should be easier to sand. So this is a prototype piece. I think this is what we're going to go with. These pieces here are the wheels that are going to be inside the casting. You can see they're smaller. They'll fit inside of there once I've made a mold of this. And then these are what will attach to our vehicle here. I printed 4 of them because we have 4 wheels. Then we've got the hubcaps. Once these are cast with rubber on the outside of them, the hubcap will cover that center part with 3 screws that go through from behind. And I've tested that I can reach I can reach back there with an Allen wrench to tighten them once it's all put on. So that's the plan. I have all my parts printed. The only thing I have to do now is sand this until it's nice and smooth and then make a silicone mold. I got my tires sanded to a point I'm very happy with, but before we do any molding, I want to add one more detail. Figured this is probably made by MomCorp, or one of their subsidiaries anyway. So we should put a logo on the tire. This will look really cool. It's going to get molded and cast, so it'll all be cast out of the same rubber, and there will be this faint raised up bit where there'll be a little bit of a logo. You'll probably won't even see it when it's driving around, but I just thought that would be a really, really neat little touch. Okay, now we can get to molding. First thing we want to do is plug these through holes. I want them to still be visible, but I don't want rubber to be able to go all the way through them. These will be used as registration when I'm doing my casting, but we don't need them right now. For all of our mold making, I use this oil-based clay. There's no sulfur in it. It's important, especially if you're going to use platinum cure silicones. You don't want any sulfur. I've had this clay for a decade or more. It used to be different colors. Now it's just this dull gray. I'm working it so it's soft enough that I can make it into a nice flat platform. And I can use this tray here to roll out the clay in nice uniform thickness. It's about a 1/2 inch right there. So I'll roll a bunch of it out until we have enough to put this down on. I found this bucket that's a really good diameter for my mold wall, so I'm going to use that. I am going to, however, cut the top off. That's all set. I'll put that on right before we pour, but now I want to get this kind of embedded. If you're curious about more mold making, we have a whole series, Molding and Casting 101, that you can go check out. We'll put a link down in the description. Cool. I'm going to scoop just a slightly lower spot here. Our tire can get nestled right down in there, and then we'll make a nice parting line along the bottom here. Okay, our part is embedded. Time to add our wall. Now I'm just going to go around that new edge along the wall. Make sure that's nice and snug. And now we'll just add some registration keys all around the perimeter. Got this, what do we have here? Mold Max 29NV. I'm using this because it's what I have. And hopefully it's still good. It should be fine. We used this recently. It is a tin cure silicone. And it says NV because you don't need a vacuum for it. It's no vacuum, but we have a vacuum chamber, so we're gonna vacuum degas it anyway. Making sure I get all the stuff off the bottom mixed in. It'll settle as it sits there on the shelf. We really want that mixed in. Start by measuring part 1. And we add part 2, part B. 58 grams of this. Now we mix. Scrape the sides, scrape the bottom. And we're gonna double mix just to make sure everything is nice and integrated. Pour it into a new container, mix it again. Now we'll remove the air. There we go, we've remove the bubbles. So now we'll pour it, and I'll just dribble it into the lowest spot and let it fill up. Thrilling. It looks so delicious. I would absolutely murder a banana cream pie right now. Probably should have hot glued this mold wall down, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Get every last bit of that good stuff. Very good. Now we wait till tomorrow. It is a new day and our banana cream pie is all set up. Time to pour the other side. First thing I need to do today is pull all this clay out. And hopefully it'll all come out in one big satisfying piece. One piece, one piece, one piece, one piece. Yeah! Awesome. Well, as far as like pouring spouts and everything, I'm gonna cut those in after the mold is done. So all I need to do now is put on, yes, thank you, Britt, put on the mold release and pour in some more silicone. That is the second half poured. I believe the cure time is 6 hours, so we'll probably get to pouring our tires tomorrow. Another day has passed and the other half of our mold is fully cured. Now we need to get this thing out of here. There we go. Before I peel the two halves apart, I want to add some sort of registration where it's going to split apart. We can kind of see the parting line right there. This is a circle, so lining it back up in the exact right spot might be a little confusing, and a line will help us do that. I could draw something on there, but it won't stay because nothing sticks to silicone. I have this X-Acto blade that I heated and then bent into a curve shape. This is for cutting registration into silicone molds. It's not very durable, but it doesn't really have to be. All I need is to be able to scoop a little bit out across both of the halves there, and now I know that's where it's going to line up. And since I definitely put mold release on this, it should come apart no problem. Yeah, there we go. There we go, and then there's a big old plug in the middle. And then this should pop right out. There we go. Well, that looks terrific. Next step, we need a way to pour our resin into this mold. And I'm going to cut that with a sharpened pipe here of this brass tube. And this is a thing I found online. It's for sharpening tubes, just the perfect tool. I can go on the inside and outside, and then we have a nice sharpened edge. And I'm going to cut, I think, 4 holes in here. There will be room for the resin to go in and for air to come out. These will all be on the back of the tire and you won't see them, so it's okay if they're a little gnarly. Boop. This will be sort of a horizontal surface while we're casting, so there is the possibility it'll catch some bubbles no matter what we do. But again, being on the back, it'll never be seen. We're also going to throw it in the pressure pot, minimize any bubbles. Here is the setup. I've cut some pieces of MDF to be the bread in my mold sandwich, and I've printed our wheels. These are going to get embedded. And this should lock right in with, with the mold I've made. And it does, very good. And then this goes on top of that. And we have our registration, which is over here. So I know exactly how this is meant to go together. So now our 3D printed part is sandwiched in there and there is a void around it. that we're going to fill with the resin. I was able to load up Fusion and find out the volume that we'll need to pour, which is so handy. I don't have to guess. It's about 200 milliliters. Here's our sandwich. It's holes for our pouring spouts. We'll rubber band it together, and then we can just pour the liquid right down in there. I've been thinking about this for weeks. I think it's going to work. Let's find out. For the castings, we're going to use Task 14. It's a semi-rigid urethane. It's got a little bit of give to it, which is exactly what we want. It's also already black, so it's the right color and everything. It doesn't need to be measured by weight, so we have a scale going here, and I know roughly how much I'm going to need. So we'll start by measuring out part A. There we go. That's about how much we need, and that's 96 grams, and then I can use my ratio calculator here. Type in 96, calculate. I need 115.2 grams of the side B. So we swap those. I feel like that should be mixed better. The color was at the bottom, really needs to be stirred. Glad we noticed that. Okay, we shook up the bottle, mixed it. That looks a lot better. Need 115. Oh, just one over. I'm sure it'll be fine. Time to do the mixing. We have 10 minutes of working time, which is plenty, he says now. I'm going to mix them in this cup first and then transfer it to this cup for the final mix. It is always cheaper to ruin 2 cups and double mix than to have to cast something again because it didn't mix properly. Scrape the sides. All right, and then it all goes into another cup for mixing. This way, anything that's on the sides and bottom will get poured on top, and it'll be easier to mix it in. This bigger cup is way easier to stir as well. Still want to scrape the sides. For pouring, I have this cup with a hole cut in the bottom to use as a funnel. And this stuff's pretty thick, so it takes a little while. We'll just pour a thin stream. And it should fill up. The vent holes are pretty crucial here because this is plugged on this end where the urethane's going in. And if there weren't any vent holes, it would just stop pouring. I didn't quite have enough, so I'm mixing a little more. Okay, let's fill it up.
It is full.
It is full. All right.
Time to pressure cast.
Yeah. I guess I'm not even going to worry about bubbles or anything because if they're in there, they're in there. I think our tire is done. Some stuff went down. So I left this in the pressure pot for an hour and then I pulled it out and 2 things were wrong. One, it wasn't fully cured yet. I think it's just too cold in here. So we got this crazy heat lamp to warm things up around here. And also it wasn't full. So it had dripped down in there a little more. So I had to mix up some more, pour it again, and then wait even longer. But I think we can pull out of the mold now and we'll see how it worked. Off you go. Whoop, that comes out. So this is the back side, and yeah, there are definitely bubbles. So even though I filled it again, it did not fully fill it. But again, backside, we're never gonna see it. Hopefully the front is a little bit nicer. Ugh. It is, but it is not cured. I'm wondering if I just didn't mix it very well. That's mostly how I wanted that to turn out. I did not want this stickiness going on here. Yeah, the mold is pretty warm now. I think I'll just set this out and see if it finishes curing all the way. A little bummer that I've got some fingerprints on there. But it looks mostly right. You know what, Britt? I see it looks like maybe some of that leaked into the infill like I thought.
Oh.
Weird. My measurement was way off as far as the volume, and I'm wondering if that's what happened. But also, you can see there's some uncured stuff in here, so it could be I just didn't mix it well enough. There's a number of things that could have gone wrong. What I can do is try again. We'll leave this and let it hopefully fully cure, and then clean up our mold with some isopropyl alcohol and give it another shot. All right, I did a small test, and I think I figured out one of our issues. There are a couple. This still just isn't curing. It's still sticky. I might be able to rescue this by cleaning the surface off, maybe even sanding it. We'll play with that later. But something caused the part of this that was touching the mold to not cure. I don't know what that was, but I do know that I didn't clean this mold right after I made it. I poured material right in there. So something from that process reacted with it. So I cleaned this with alcohol and I poured another little test, and that's curing just fine. This is exactly what we want. We can see our text. That looks good. Don't need that, but that let me know that I should have cleaned the mold. My fault. Always clean your mold right after you make it. The other issue is that the resin is leaking into the infill of my 3D print. So it's using up more resin than I thought it would. That's probably why it had a lower level when I left it in the pressure pot. So how do I keep resin from leaking into, there's tiny little holes and it just wants to sneak into those. I think what we'll do is coat this in something before it gets molded. So we've got some Mod Podge here. I have 3 more of these to go. I'll coat them with that. I'm gonna let these dry for a full day and we'll try casting again tomorrow. All right, it is another new day and time to try again. This was our first attempt, and while it does look good, it's still sticky and it's going to stay sticky probably forever. I even tried to sand it, which did nothing. So I printed another one. So we have 4 of our wheels here, and I've cleaned everything. I warmed everything up. Let's give it another try. That gets locked into place for this to go together. I'm running a timer this time so I can keep track of my pot life. I have 2 funnels set up here so I can kind of have them both going at the same time. So that it fills a little quicker. Well, I have 8 minutes left in my pot life, but this stuff starts to set up and it gets really thick, and then it doesn't want to flow down into the mold. Fill it up and watch it go on down. It appears to be full, but we've been here before. It could be that it is full. It could be that it's not going to go into the infill and then that's it. But I don't trust it. This does look quite full. I think we mixed up almost the perfect amount. Let's get rid of that excess a little bit. There we go. I have 5 minutes left on my pot life. I'm going to let this chill for a couple minutes in case that goes down and flows a bit more. Maybe tap and see if some bubbles come out, but I haven't seen any bubbles come out. So with extreme confidence, I'm putting it in the pressure pot. Well, this is our second attempt. I did have to top it off again. I think the pressure pot is forcing the resin down into the infill, even though we sealed it. So I had to put some more rubber in there, but it seems, that was satisfying. It seems to have mostly filled up. We have a few bubbles in the back here. I'm not too worried about those. Let's see how the rest of it looks. That looks pretty cool.
That looks awesome.
This is what we were going for here. Got our text. Yeah, you can really see how it got into the infill. That's wild. I think for the rest of the casting, I maybe just don't put it in the pressure pot. We'll see if that does any better. But that looks pretty good. All right, it's not sticky. Terrific. Now all I have to do is that 3 more times. That is all 4 tires, and I am so pleased with how they turned out. We ended up not using the pressure pot at all, and they look great. They're so legit. Let's put them on the car. There's a hexagon in our rim that matches up with the mechanics on our RC car, and that goes right on like that. And then there's a nut that holds that in place. Oh, that's so cool. And then we'll give it a tighten. There we go. The hubcaps are going to cover all of this. These will eventually be sanded and painted. Then there's these 3 holes that match with these 3 holes. And we can screw them in, and that'll thread right into the plastic, and it should be more than enough to hold it in place. That's how the hubcap works. I'm going to leave them off for now, but let's get the rest of the tires on so we can give it a test drive. You know, these tires this is exactly what I had in my head. I'm just chuffed beyond words. It's taken a while to get there. I've always had big ambitions. I used to play with RC cars all the time and wanted to do projects like this, especially when I was a teenager, but I didn't have the skills or the tools or the patience to pull something off like this, and now I do. It's taken a while. The last 15 years or so of my life have been pretty dedicated to learning how to make all kinds of stuff. Every once in a while I'll do a project that really pushes me beyond what I'm capable of. And the end result has been, now when I have this strong vision for what a project is going to be, I can actually hit that vision. I'm getting a lot better at it anyway. Especially the last like 5 or 6 years, I've really pushed myself, invested in my skills, invested in my tools, and now I can do this. It's a very satisfying feeling. And I have no intention of stopping. My ambition always just slightly outpaces my current skill set. All right, the wheels are on. We should probably put the body on, I think. Yeah. On it goes. And this body I've worked on a little bit since last week. In fact, I dropped it. Most of it fell apart. Someone was recommending fiberglassing the inside, and I'm definitely going to do that, especially across the seams here, to make it even more durable. So I appreciate, we've been getting lots of great comments, lots of great suggestions for this build. Keep it up, because we are reading them and taking them to heart. Another great bit of advice someone left was you can get slower motors or slower geared motors. This doesn't need to be very fast. In fact, the faster it is, the more likely it is I'm gonna crash it and wreck a lot of work. So yeah, please, if you see anything you think would be helpful in this build, let me know, because we are reading all your comments and taking them to heart. Let's sneak the battery down in there. 1.21 gigawatts. There we go. It's on, and then Bender has a little base that we can stick in there so that we can go for a test drive. Our very first voyage for Bender and his tiny little car. An absolute success. Oh, the one tire is a little wobbly in the back. Actually, the whole back is a little wobbly. See what's going on here? Not sure what's causing that. I do know that is the heavier tire. All right, so that tire was actually rubbing against the car body. So if I raise it all up a little bit, like I designed it to be able to do, it should fix that. Look at that. Look at that. All kinds of clearance. Now I should just be able to tighten it and we'll be in good shape. All right, let's see how he performs now. Oh, so much better. Haha, look at him go. Well, this was a huge success. I'm so happy right now. I cannot wait to start adding more features to my little car here. I think next thing we're gonna do will be the lights. I got a kit to add headlights and brake lights, and I'm really excited to add those. I'm gonna keep working on the body, and eventually we'll start building his head. I am so pleased. Thanks so much for hanging out with us this week. This has been such a blast. Thanks again for the comments. It's been super helpful having people chiming in. That'll wrap it up. Special thanks to the members of our Extra Credit Club for the support over the years. Whether it's on Patreon or right here on YouTube, you can support what we do by throwing us a few bucks, get access to our videos early. We couldn't do it without you. Please keep that up. Until next week and more of Bender, I'm just gonna be smiling from ear to ear. This is so much fun. All right, that's it for me. Happy crafting. Hey! Oh, still got some life in him. Chill out. This bucket has a pretty perfect circumference for my mold wall, so I'm going to use that to encase all my silicone. I'm going to cut the top of it off. I should have used a saw. I'm going to get a different bucket. We have a vacuum chamber, so we're going to vacuum degas it anyway. Nailed it.